Hello and welcome to Young Turks, India's longest running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan. Now the country's all set to go into its biggest shopping frenzy as we enter the festive season. The great Indian e-commerce sales are back, and this year could be special for the industry. The big bargain days in the coming months will mark the 10th year of e-commerce festive season sales in India. Now, how has the decade panned out for click and order? And has it ushered in India's digital revolution? Following a 20-fold growth since 2014, we could exit 2023 with annual online shopping worth over 5 lakh crore rupees, as per a Redseer report. Now, this festive season could be the best ever, with merchandise worth 90,000 crore rupees expected to be sold in just a month or so, which contributes to a fifth of India's e-retail sales every year. But there are concerns. E-commerce growth in the last couple of quarters has been the lowest historically. Inflation is pinching the pocket, and enthusiasm in small-town India has taken a beating. However, it's not as bad, says Deloitte's Global Consumer Pulse Tracker. Let's listen in to Rajiv Singh, partner at Deloitte.
While globally there is a lot of talk about recession, there is a lot of talk of high inflation. Even in India, for example, we see high inflation. But the consumer sentiment in India seems to be going very, very strong. So the research that we do on a quarterly basis, this indicates that the consumer sentiment is only going more and more stronger despite inflation staying higher. And the more we talk to the consumers, the more we are hearing that the consumers are wanting to spend on luxury products. They want to spend more on premium things. And this has nothing to just do with buying of goods and so on and so forth. But they're also looking at, say, for example, going on vacations, but not going to vacations next door, but going to, say, distant vacations. We are growing as a country. Our per capita income is growing up. Especially in the urban areas, we have definitely seen a definite increase. At the same time, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that the savings percentage has gone a little down. And the discretionary spend that the consumers are doing, especially post-COVID, has seen a hike. It's just the confidence that the consumers have currently that they will be able to manage with the uncertain expenses that may come their way, maybe from medical perspectives or anything uncertain that hits them.
Consumer confidence is high. That's the Deloitte view. To take the discussion forward, we're now joined by Nandita Sinha, the CEO of Myntra, Atul, Mehta, the Chief Operating Officer at e-commerce logistics platform Shiprocket, and also Anil, Kumar, the founder and CEO of Redseer. Nandita and gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on Young Turks. Anil, I want to address what we are seeing in terms of trends, demand trends at this point in time, backed by what Redseer is picking up. As we just heard there from Deloitte, consumer sentiment continues to be strong. Premiumization, the luxury market continues to hold very, very strong at this point in time. But there are signs of concern, especially on account of inflation. Now, what's the expectation? Do you expect this to be a blockbuster festive season?
Hi, Shereen. Okay, so I think this is the 10th year, as you rightly mentioned, a special festive year. But I think there are probably two themes playing out here. One is, of course, the larger theme about the consumer inflation, the changes in the demand pattern in overall from an overall Indian consumer perspective. And the second theme which is playing out is how are the internet platforms really geared up to net the consumer demand as we speak today. So I think while I agree with the fact that Indian consumers' demand is robust and inflation is not the biggest challenge, but when it comes to the India internet story, the big theme which has been for the last 1 year is how to be looking good on unit economics. And that has probably made platforms be a lot more economical about how much do they spend. And that is something which we believe is going to play out in the festive season as well. But the good part is in our expectation that... sorry, yeah. Are you saying something?
No, that's an interesting point that you make, but let's address the silver lining that you were talking about as well. Go ahead, and then I'll come back with my question.
I think the silver lining here is that the event over the last 10 years has become a pretty big jamboree, and everyone has started respecting that consumers do splurge and spend around the festive period. And what it means is that the amount of spend or investment which needs to be done to make this event successful doesn't need to come completely from the platforms, but rather a lot of this money has been pumped in from the financial partners, which are credit cards and banks and the D2C brands and so on. So I would say that in terms of the overall investment, which will go for the festive season, should definitely not go down, and we'll definitely see the largest festive season ever. But probably from a growth perspective, maybe the growth might not be as high as we've seen in the last few years.
Okay, so the largest festive season ever, but as you point out, the pace of growth has come off on account of the many challenges that we just spoke of. But Nandita, let's address the issue that Anil just raised. Look, it is a challenging environment, not only on account of inflation, which is biting the pockets of the consumer, but also platforms, are facing trouble because the free money, the easy money is not that easy to get by anymore. So one is the question of how much is the consumer willing to splurge, but the other question is how much are platforms willing to splurge to entice the consumer, and do they have the room, the flexibility to do so today?
Hi, Shereen. I think the way to look at this question is really to say that what is it that we are adding for the consumer in the festive season, and what are the number of new things and opportunities that brands actually see to expand their consumer base during the festive season. This is probably the best time where they can increase their consumer franchise. And if you look at a platform like Myntra, for example, you will have this, festive season, almost, new categories which are actually becoming the mainstay in terms of how we are looking at the customer wallet. So a category like beauty and personal care has almost 300 new brands which will participate for the first time in our festive season. And 50 of them are actually international. On the apparel side, 25 plus new international brands will celebrate in the Indian festive season for the first time. The country has 100 million Gen Z consumers. So they will probably, some of them will shop for the first time in the festive season. D2C, Anil spoke about it, how that is actually expanding their customer franchise through platforms like Myntra and using this as an occasion to actually increase the customer penetration and wallet share both. So I think there is opportunity for us to look at how we are expanding the offering for our customers, and brands, how do they kind of look at the customer franchise and what do they want to do about it is one way of looking at it. And as we enter into the festive season, I think the good indications are always, festivals like Rakhi, Ganesh Chaturthi, Onam, they are, a bellwether in terms of how festive season looks like. And we've seen good traction in these festivals, especially around core categories and new categories. So I think the opportunity is about really helping customers and brands discover each other actually. And that's where the best value comes to the customers.
Since we're speaking about value, Nandita, and that's an interesting point that you made, and that's what I want to understand from you as well. As we see this shift away from what were typically low margin categories like mobile phones and so on and so forth, into perhaps what could potentially be higher margin categories like beauty, personal care and apparel, are you seeing this margin mix change to benefit platforms like yours?
I think a lot of these categories that you spoke about, Shereen, are actually selection driven categories where there is a lot of scope to help customers buy more through the different categories and brands that we expose them to. And that's where I think there is a need for us to look at new customers coming onto the platform, as well as the customers who are part of the platform buying more categories and buying more brands. And I'll give an example. Like for us, if you look at the last few festivals that we've seen in this year, we've seen almost 100% growth in ethnic wear as a category. There is more trend buying that is happening from the menswear perspective. Fusion is a big category that's coming up. If you look at some of the big gifting categories like fragrances or, accessories, they all are growing. So I think as customer share or customer comfort with e-commerce is growing, the number of categories and the share of wallet is actually growing on some of these categories, which is a good indication of how probably both growth and best, margins, etc., will play out for the platforms.
Yeah, I would imagine. Atul, let me come to you to start with. Have you contributed to aiding sales growth for Nandita? She talked about menswear being a category that's seeing a fair amount of traction. I don't know if you've been contributing to that or not, Atul, but take me through how you're gearing up for the festive season.
Thanks, Shereen. I think for us, see, one, we from a vantage point of the biggest D2C enabler, we start seeing a precursor of what is going to happen. Like Nandita talked about, the festive, the pre-season sales have been doing well for our merchants. We have seen in August the Rakhi sale for D2C brands, and a lot of them start doing it earlier on their direct commerce websites before the marketplaces. So we're seeing a lot of traction. We're seeing a lot of tier 2, tier 3 penetration going up this time, right? First time shoppers shopping on these websites, and a lot of discretionary spends on categories which are long tail, right? Whether the accessories, whether it is gifting, whether it is home decor. So that I think are good signs on the lead up to festive season, what the consumer sentiment is, how willing are they to spend on these discretionary items. I think on how we are preparing for it, see, we take care of more the experience which our merchants are able to deliver, right? So we have almost doubled our warehousing footprint. We are now at 2 million square feet. We have opened 3 state-of-the-art warehouses across Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, 100K plus facilities, so that our merchants are able to deliver faster. We are going to operate our warehouses at in 3 shifts, double the manpower. That's on the warehousing side. On the last mile side, doing capacity planning, ramping up our analytics to be able to predict which are the areas of stress for merchants, so that they can move the volume from supplier 1 to supplier 2. And on the conversion side as well. So we, like as Shiprocket, we have been helping merchants with post checkout experience, but this year we are helping them with remarketing, creating festive campaigns for SMB merchants we work with, so that they can retarget to their customers and get them to shop on the platform.
Important point that you mentioned. Let me get Anil to comment on that. And Anil, I'm looking at, the Redseer report, which basically talks about how the average spend per shopper stagnated at about $273 in FY23 versus $272 in FY22. So one, how much of a concern is that? And two, again, this, metro, non-metro demand that we were talking about. Yes, we've actually seen the non-metro demand pick up in the last few years. But given the pressures at this point in time, what's the expectation as far as demand outlook is concerned on the non-metro side?
Right. So, Shereen, what happened last year was, and actually it's been a trend over the last couple of years, that the tier 2 market or the smaller cities have been the big demand driver for the e-commerce platforms. In fact, a majority of the GMV as well as customer transaction growth over the last few years have come in from the smaller cities. And the implication of that has been the small city customers have also been buying a low AOV products. So which means the new customers which are coming from small cities are actually bringing down the AOV, while metros have been raising the AOV to some extent. And that's where the flattening or a slight reduction in the AOV has been seen over the last couple of years or so, 1 year or so. As we see this year, I think our expectation is the massive demand difference between the small city and large city is going to taper down, which means the growth from the large city and the small city is going to look similar. It is a combination of a couple of reasons. Is that we see a lot of folks who really migrated to small cities after COVID have come back. So the demand concentration, which was moved towards small cities, has actually evened out now. And also from a penetration perspective, we see that there is a bit of a tapering, which we've seen over the last 1 year in general. And that's where the small city demand is not going to be exceptionally higher. One additional point I just want to talk about, just going back to the category mix you really spoke about and has an implication on AOV, average order value, as we call it. Historically, we've seen mobiles has been a very big contributor for the GMV. And when the big billion days and the GIF really started about a few years back, mobiles used to account for about 50 to 60% of GMV. Last year, we saw that contribution coming down to 35%. And that's a low margin category, as you just mentioned. Fashion was a big bumper category which really grew and became actually the largest category last year across the board, and one of the largest categories when it comes to the festive period at about 24%. The categories where we're seeing expecting the demand to really go very high in this particular festive season would be BPC, which is beauty and personal care, as we call it, large electronics and small electric appliances.
Okay, so those are the categories to watch out for this festive season. Nandita and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick break here on Young Turks. We continue to chat about what the festive season is likely to mean in terms of hiring as well for platforms. What could it do for the gig economy? That and more when we return. You're watching Young Turks. The festive season is here and we're tracking how the e-commerce space is likely to play out. I'm in conversation with Nandita Sinha, the CEO of Myntra, Atul Mehta, the Chief Operating Officer at e-commerce logistics platform Shiprocket, and Anil Kumar, the founder and CEO of Redseer. I'm looking at a TeamLease report which talks about festive season demand surge resulting in the need for more workers as well. It says overall e-commerce industry is expected to create 7 lakh gig jobs in the second half of 2023, and festive hiring is expected to see a 25% increase in gig jobs year on year. Atul, let me start by asking you, explain to me, given the kind of demand that you're anticipating, what should we expect you to do in terms of hiring?
So, we're already kicked in the hiring we need to. I think I talked about we start seeing sales a bit early on the direct commerce platform as well. But yeah, we are expecting to have almost an 100% increase in manpower to manage the festive demand load. And it's a combination of both. I think one is the actual growth we expect on account of the festive season. And also, I think a key part of a key part is also the experience which we are able to offer to the consumers, and hence running more shifts in the warehouse, ensuring the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day delivery promises are not breached, even though there is 1.5 or 2x demand on certain days, is driving that increase. So yes, we are expecting a almost doubling of the manpower we have in our warehouses to be able to manage the peak volume with an increased service levels as well at the same time.
What would that mean in terms of numbers when you talk about a doubling and 100% growth in numbers? What is the current headcount that you have? And I'm just trying to understand what that could mean.
So we operate almost 40 odd warehouses. So yeah, like you can talk about some 20-30K gig workers doubling over the next 1.5 months as we get into the festive season.
Okay, that's good news as far as the gig economy is concerned. Nandita, all kinds of big numbers are being bandied about. In Anil's words, this is likely to be historically the biggest ever festive season sale that we are going to see in the 10-year history that we've seen. What's the aspiration for you at Myntra? What's the target that you've set? What are you aiming for?
So I think I'll probably answer this in a view of saying that and we are in the 10th year of festive season in that sense. And I think one of the big opportunities that we see during the festive season is really how do you increase your customer franchise? And that's what the core goal is as we get into the festive season. Of course, there is revenue that we look at it, but I think the biggest the role that the festive season actually also plays is how do we keep increasing our customer franchise? A lot of this actually comes in from newer cities, so non-metro. Atul spoke about it. So I think one of the big goals is to really how do we go deeper into non-metros? And the team has been prepping for it in terms of adding more selection. We've added almost 5 lakh selection, which caters to non-metro. The other goal is to really look at how do you increase the how do you premiumize and diversify the category mix that you see for customers. So that's the other goal, that how do you actually ensure that categories like beauty and personal care, home, accessories, footwear, they kind of see the glory that apparel has been seeing over the last few years. And then there is premiumization as a goal, because overall, as you covered in the first part of your conversation, that there is the income, which is growing for a certain set of customers. So how do you premiumize customers as they build more comfort with e-commerce? So I think those would be some of the goals that we have. I think Again, I think just a reflection of how
I'm still going to try and pin you down to I'm still going to try and elicit a number from you in terms of the goal that you have, Nandita. Let's talk about user base. You said that you aspire to deepen penetration as far as the non-metros are concerned. What is the current metro, non-metro user base mix for you, and what's the aspiration there?
Our user base today is looking at a 40-45% non-metro base and a 55% metro base. I think that's where we are trying to build more non-metro consumers in and increase their spends, because there is a real gap that actually we can fulfill in terms of the aspiration and accessibility. So that's what the goal is, that how do you take it closer to 50-50. Today, the mix stands at around 40-45% for non-metro versus metro for a platform like Myntra. So that's where I would, leave you with a number.
Okay, so a 50-50 split is what you're hoping for. By when?
Sorry, I think I couldn't hear the question.
50-50 by when?
Hoping like next year. I think as we build that base during this festive season, I think next year we should be able to go towards that journey and accelerate that journey actually.
Okay, Anil, and this is what I want to understand from you, because here we're talking about the mix changing. Nandita's talking about 50-50 split down the middle between metro and non-metro. Forget GMV. Give me your GMV estimate number, but I'm saying forget GMV, because let's not obsess about that. Let's talk about, maturation as far as the user base is concerned, and what that also means in terms of monetization, since we are now all talking about unit economics and profitability. You're on mute, Anil.
Sorry, I hope I'm audible now. Yeah. So, Shereen, if you look at
the go ahead.
number of customers who are shopping online on an annual basis in India, pretty much about 150 million odd, give or take. And a good 2/3 of these customers are coming from tier 2 cities, about 20% of these coming from metro, and about 15% of them coming from tier 1. As I spoke about, historically over the last 2-3 years, we've seen that the growth of the small city customers have been growing almost more than 2 times of metro and tier 1 cities. So those have been the consumers who've been joining the Indian e-tailing bandwagon for the first time. And as Nandita rightly mentioned, that Festive is a great occasion where platforms see it as one of the big opportunities to net some other first-time users onto the platforms and then have a certain kind of a retention from them. So practically we see a bump on the number of customers who shop online in Festive every year. Like, for example, last year, what we saw was there was about 25 to 30% jump in terms of the number of shoppers who started buying online first time on the Festive season. Going on to the monetization bit, I think one of the things which is happening is the category shift, as I spoke about a bit earlier, is one of the key drivers for monetization, where high margin categories like fashion, beauty, personal care are the one which have anywhere between 15 to 35% margin versus versus mobile having about 4 or 5% margin. So that is another bit which is happening around the monetization. And the other bit about offloading the expense of the overall festive season between various partners rather than platforms bearing all of it on their own, that is another bit which is helping the platforms monetize and get a better unit economics.
Okay, well, Anil, Atul and Nandita, we wish you the very best of luck. And Nandita and Atul, we will check in with you for your individual stories and your individual milestones at the end of this festive season. And Anil, we'll talk to you to get a picture as far as the ecosystem is concerned at the end of this festive season. Will it turn out to be the best ever? Is the question and is the hope. That's it then on this edition of Young Turks. We'll take a quick break and be back with you in a moment.